Good morning, everyone. As our country became more urbanized and industrialized, tensions grew between labor and management. And one of the most violent examples of that happened or started on this date, June 30 in 1892, in Homestead, Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh, in what is known as the Homestead Strike. Pittsburgh sits where two rivers come together, the Monongahela from the south, the Allegheny from the north, and they join to form the Ohio River. So look to the right of Pittsburgh on the southern river, the Monongahela. A couple bends, you see the word Homestead. That's where our story took place. Andrew Carnegie was the head of the Carnegie Steel Company. This became U.S. Steel later. He was an innovator. He kept track of technology, and his plants were really, really efficient. And Henry Frick was his operations manager. And Frick was involved more directly in trying to break the strike of our story than Carnegie. So there are two kinds of unions in the late 1800s. Craft unions had skilled workmen and trade unions had unskilled. Now, because of the technological advances at Homestead, most of the workers were unskilled. Yet the union, here's its seal, the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, was basically for skilled workers. So most of the workers at the Homestead plant did not even belong to the union. So when the union voted to strike on this date, June 30, 1892, it wasn't really clear what the rank and file would do, but they did go along with it at first. So Frick, with Carnegie's approval, contacted the Pinkerton Agency. They wanted to break the strike because Frick had advertised for strike-breaking workers to come in and work. So what Pinkertons did is they got a bunch of men together, many of whom didn't know anything about what they were going to do, and put them on barges and sent them up the river to the Homestead site. So look where it says Homestead, and there's a zucchini-shaped piece of land next to it. That's where the factory was. So barges came up about 2 in the morning on July 6, and look at the center panel. It shows the action. The barges came up. Pinkertons tried to fight their way up the bank to the plant. Strikers were shooting back at them. There were thousands of people watching this. There are all kinds of eyewitnesses to this, and who shot first, not everybody agrees on that. But many of the strikers had fought in the Civil War, and they knew how to shoot. They also had a cannon. And look at that bridge in the background, by the way. I'm going to mention that later. But by the end of the day, about 5 p.m., the strikers won, and the Pinkertons that survived were escorted out of town, and the strikers felt pretty good about the day's activities. Unknown to them, though, the governor was really not happy with this, particularly because of his support of Carnegie. So about a week later, he sent in the militia pictured here, and they declared martial law and basically took over Homestead so the strikebreakers could come in, and the strike was broken. So this is the Homestead plant in its heyday, a sprawling industrial complex along the river. It's all gone now. And if you look at this photo at that same zucchini-shaped piece, it's mostly shopping. But across the way, on the right, you can barely see a little rusty thing all by itself. And that's this. It's a blast furnace. This is also on the National Register of Historic Places. It's the only surviving blast furnace of that era. So you can take tours of it, and people actually get married there. So how's that for a wedding site? Across the river, near that zucchini-shaped piece of land, is this, the pump house and the water tower. These were there during the strike, and it's along that edge of the river that the strikers shot down on the Pinkertons. And this is called the Pinkerton Landing Railroad Bridge. This is the bridge I mentioned earlier. The piers are original, but the trusses go back to the 1940s or 50s. This building is still up. This was where the union had its headquarters, and the strike was sort of run from there. Now, Henry Frick lived in Pittsburgh for a while. Here's his house. There's also a museum and some gardens associated with the Frick estate. So the next time you watch the Steelers, Think about the steel industry in Pittsburgh and how the Homestead strike was an important part of that history.